5 practical lessons that we can draw from the experiences of the 4 characters that feature in Genesis 27. And the first of these is that they are profoundly flawed people, all broken in different ways. It's a dysfunctional family. You can tell from the way everyone talks to someone, but no one talks to everyone. But this is the family through which all nations on earth will be blessed. So let's all ditch that copy that we've got of the goodies and baddies Bible, the one that seems to indicate that God's promises are earned by human merits, because there's precious little human merit on display in Genesis 27. On the other hand, if your church is a dysfunctional family, and I've yet to meet a church that isn't, don't despair and keep on praying. God is faithful when his people are not. Now let's think about Isaac. Lesson for us here is what makes him vulnerable to deception. It isn't just that he has a taste for wild game. Now this is emphasised throughout the chapter. 8 mentions of game, 6 of tasty food. That on its own would not be a problem. The problem comes when there's a link between blessing and tasty food, and Isaac himself makes that link in verse 4. Why should he need to be eating his favourite dinner before he does, as he sees it, his parental duty? Now, if you're blind and you make blessing dependent on tasty food, then you are wide open to deception by the first person to waft a plateful of it under your nose. Agreed? Right, but then aren't we wide open to deception through spiritual blindness, where we have a long list of preconditions that need to be in place before we can worship? We need a comfortable chair, band that's in tune, a warm church, feelings of well-being, and so much else. Sense that people like us, In practice, haven't we just made ourselves vulnerable to deception in just the same way? So long as we're getting what we want, we won't ask too many questions about who's giving it to us. So we built a deception superhighway into our lives without knowing it. Better to have no preconditions at all on worship. Okay, Isaac is deceived, but he himself was attempting a deception. He knows that word which the Lord gave to Rebekah. It's back in Genesis 25. 2 nations are in your womb, and 2 peoples from within you will be separated. 1 people will be stronger than the other, and the older will serve the younger. But Isaac loves the older brother, Esau, because he has a taste for wild game, which Esau supplies. So Isaac is trying to thwart God by redirecting the blessing to Esau. Hence the attempt to do this between him and Esau. Normally the blessing would be delivered in public. Isaac is trying to be sneaky. He doesn't succeed. He is out-sneaked by his lady wife. Rebekah is determined to get the blessing to fall upon Jacob, where, after all, God chose for it to belong. There are 4 reasons given in the text that she is able to succeed, and each of them are worth taking to heart for us as we seek to make sure that God's blessing is directed to the people for whom he intends it. In other words, as we do the work of an evangelist. So, what 4 things are her keys to success? Verse 5, she is listening intently. Verse 9, she knows what makes Isaac tick. Verse 13, she is prepared to take all the risks. And verses 14 to 17, she is prepared to put in the hard work. Listen to people, learn what makes them tick. Take the risks on yourself on their behalf. Do the grunt, put in the hard yards. Esau next. Why the loud and bitter cry of verse 36? Surely he knew he'd sold the birthright. But he also knew he was the eldest son and his father's favourite. So he had expectations. And those expectations came to nothing because they weren't based on God. If Milrow Baptist Church doesn't want its story to end in tears like those of Esau, we'd better make sure that our expectations are not built on anything but the promises of God and the character of God. And then there's Jacob. Just doing what he's told. Well, and lying to his father and deceiving his brother. Of course, that goes without saying. Dysfunction junction is this family. But essentially doing what he's told and receiving the blessing. What do we possibly learn from him? or surely it's the cost. When you're meant to be the one that's poor and dispossessed, and God turns the tables so that you inherit the best of the best, it can quickly seem like the whole world is against you, and it probably very soon does for Jacob. If you have been, thank you for listening.